Hey, how's it going? It's James for VFX Nomad, and I'm going to give you a quick little spotlight on groups. Groups, largely self-explanatory. They group things together, but they do have a bunch of cool little features that you might not be aware of. So that's what we're going to look into. So here I'm just going to try groups 01, and we're going to dive in. Now, first thing that I'm going to make is a group. So if we look at a group, it has a few options here in the attribute editor. Largely I would leave all of this top section alone. It's asking you if you want to manually press the refresh button or automatically do it. Automatic's normally better. And here's a filter, and it's asking you if you want to refine your results or cull what it is that you can look at. Now, generally speaking, you'll only be touching this if you really know what you're doing. So I wouldn't recommend even looking at this at all. So I would just close it. Now, the first thing that you've got here is a group of what to include. The second part is a group of what to exclude. And the third one is what do we get, like the result of those two things. Talking about this in abstract is a little weird. So what we're going to do is just a quick little exercise, and I'm going to make a folder called Geo. In this folder called Geo, we are going to create just some arbitrary geometry. So create whatever it is that you feel like. Here I'm going to make a bunch of polyspheres. And I'm going to say, you go over there, you go over there, and you go over there. Now, I don't know if you know this, but with groups, you can drag and drop them into this viewer here, into this context. So this is just now going to show us the result of the group. Now, if I look at the group, there is no result. There's nothing included, right? So we're going to start with the inclusion items. The easiest way to do this is to press add, go to the geo, add your polysphere. That works just fine. If you want to do it with dragging and dropping, just lock this window in place, go to your geo, and drag another one in there. And of course you can shift drag a bunch of things in there, and that also works. Okay, so that in essence is you grouping a bunch of things together. And you've seen that one example of how to use it is to look at stuff. Now, all is well and good, except for when we get to a point where we're like, hey, let's duplicate this. And then we move them over here, and you'll see that we don't see anything. They exist, but we haven't added them to the group. Now, to continually come back here and keep adding stuff to the group is super annoying, right? You don't really want to do that. Luckily for us, they thought of this. So I'm just going to remove everything from the inclusion items. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to make an inclusion rule. It's going to use some simple syntax, but just follow along because it can take a couple turns of doing it yourself to get used to this. Now, the simplest way to do this, I'll start by showing you the way that I'd recommend, and then show you like some cheats. So what we can do is if you just say period / that means from this folder that this group is in, / means go to the next step, and we're looking for a folder. Now the only folder in there is called Geo, so we're going to say look in Geo, and star means anything. So it says from this folder, look forward and search for something called Geo, and give me everything that's in the Geo folder. We're going to press enter. And what you'll see is that we get all of our polyspheres. Okay. Now this is just a rule. So the rule can be as general as you like. This is the way that I would recommend you do it. You could also be dirty and do something and just type polysphere. Right? That's going to work too. Nothing changed. We can still see everything. It works, but just think about it. You may end up with another polysphere somewhere else in your scene, and it's going to look for that as well. It's going to add anything with a name that fits any part of that. So as long as the word that you're searching for is anywhere in your scene, it will add it to that group, which can be super dangerous. So I wouldn't recommend doing this. The same kind of applies if you were thinking of just going Geo and you were going to do it. Okay, still works. Our thing is still populated, but we have a problem. And I can kind of prove that to you. So, sorry. What we can do is we can create another folder and call it Geo2. And in here, we're going to drop some of these and we're going to move them over there. Now, I really shouldn't be able to see these guys, but I can, even though they're in a different folder, right? Because this rule is so generic. Okay. Now, I don't want to confuse you. I'm just trying to highlight that it's dangerous. If we go back to the proper rule that we said at the beginning, it gets rid of those extra ones that we don't need. Okay. So until this kind of makes sense to you, I would just say either manually include the items or write a specific rule. And the easiest way to do a specific rule is / the name of the folder that you want / and then star, and that will take everything that's in that folder. Now, you may get to a certain point where you want to exclude certain things from the result. You will know when you get there. Now, if this is too much, you can turn this video off right now and just go about your day and everything will be fine. But if you want to know a little bit more, then we'll play with the exclusion rule for a second. Now, what we're going to do is create these 4 grids, I'd say. Okay. Now, because our rule is automatic, it has added them to our group straight away. And we know that because we're looking at the group. Now, let's say you want a bit of control and you want to say, I just want the polyspheres. I don't want the polygrids. You can do that. And you can just say poly. You can literally write the name of the thing that you don't want. So you can say polygrid, and now all the polygrids are gone. That's the simplest way to do it. You can be more explicit if you want. You can follow the rule that we made above, and you can say everything in the geo folder that's called polygrid. But in this case, you really don't need to. And that's largely what the exclusion rules do. If you don't want to sort of write this code, you can just go add and then manually say, I don't want these things in the group. And then they're gone. This is your result, by the way. It's showing you everything. So this will dynamically update. If I remove them from here, they will appear here. See? There they are. And then again, the same rule applies. If you lock this thing, go to your geo group, you can select the things that you don't want and drop them in here. And now they're removed from the group. Okay? Now that may have been too much information, but I just wanted to explain these categories. In its simplest way, you either add the items that you want to a group or create a simple rule to pull in the geo that you want. And then you have these controls here to get rid of things that you don't want at the same time. So what groups do, you will discover as you go through things. The most obvious one is to look at the viewer. If you're stuck on this, you can always just go to context, which I think is what it is on by default. And then you also have the chance to use groups for, let me unlock this. You also have the chance to use groups down here under things like lights, geometry, shadows, ray tracing, whatever. So I tend to use them a lot for this in my workflow, but for you, do whatever makes sense. But yeah, that's groups. Hope it made sense. If you like what you've seen, subscribe. Got any questions, leave them in the comments below. And hopefully I'll have some more spotlights for you soon.